Let's start one interesting journey on the GenAI using AWS Bedrock. We'll develop a complete AI app using Bedrock S3 API Gateway Streamlit. Welcome to Techno with me. If you want to learn more, please subscribe. Okay, let's start some hands-on using certain few use cases. The very first use case that we are going to build is image generation through Bedrock. So what we are going to cover in this section, we are going to see the architecture overview or the data flow or the different AWS services that we are going to use to achieve this particular use case. And then we'll create a S3 bucket to store the generated image by the Bedrock, and access, which is already covered in the playground section. Image-based model is required. Okay, make sure that you have access to this image-based model, any of the diffusion image-based model. And then this particular model ID would be required. So if you know, like from the model catalog, you can get the model ID. So if you go here, let's see. So if you go to the model Bedrock and click on the model catalog and click on stability AI. Okay, let's go to stability AI. 1 second, image. There are 4 over here. So if we go click on this one. Okay, so this is the model ID. From here, you can fetch the model ID. And the URL is also present. From this URL also, you can fetch the model ID. So if you go and then open this URL, and now you will see the model ID for all the provider and the model name and what type of region it supports and input modalities. So this particular URL is also very much helpful for all kind of informations. Okay, so that is there. Now if we go to this PPT, so we'll see permission we'll give the permission to Lambda so that Lambda can access S3 as well as Bedrock. And then we'll create Lambda functions to access S3 and Bedrock, which will actually perform the logic. Okay, and then we'll create pre-signed URL inside our Lambda, and then we'll use AWS API Gateway integration. So we'll create the URL and then we'll integrate that URL with the AWS API Gateway. There are few couple of URL which would be helpful in case you want to learn that more documentations related to AWS Bedrock and how this particular Bedrock Boto3 libraries, about the Boto3 libraries. Then these are the Boto3 libraries documentation is very helpful. So this one we are going to use. Okay, Boto3.client that we are going to use. This is a very helpful URL that you can look into it. And the other URL is also this one. Okay, so this is related to our, suppose various model has various payload, right? Like request format. So this particular URL is related to model our stability AI. Okay, so stability AI, which is we are going to use this stability AI model. What type of input, what type of parameter is required to build the invoke model? We are going to call invoke model. Then in the invoke model, we are going to pass this kind of body inside the parameter. Okay, so these are the thing that we need to look into it. So in the sections, hands-on section, I will definitely go through in detail, but you can look into those documentation also prior to start your hands-on. So this is the architecture. First we will focus on the Lambda. Okay, but the flow will come from this side, API Gateway, and then it will go to Lambda, but we will first implement Lambda, and then in the Lambda we'll create functions. Okay, the business logic which will invoke the Bedrock with certain inference parameters. That inference parameters specific for stability AI or the model that you are going to use. Okay, so that you can look into the from the other URL. So then this will Bedrock will call the LLM. Okay, then these are backside, right? We don't need to bother about it, and then it will create the image based on the prompt that user query, and then it will store the image into is AWS S3. Okay, Amazon S3, and this S3 will create our using Lambda will create also pre-signed URL of this S3, and then we'll integrate this with the API gateway so that user can access that S3 URL through the URL, okay, through the API gateway. So this is what we are going to develop. Okay, so let's start and developing the very first use case. Thank you. We'll first start and create a Lambda function. Click on that create function and give a name, meaningful name. Let's give a name create image and select Python from here if you want to write in the Python the Lambda function, and click on the create function. Let's wait for this to create. Okay, so function has been created successfully. Now you can see this is the code section, right, where you can start writing code over here. You can move to the new editor, or you can like move to the old editor. By default it will come to the new editor, so I just move to the old editor. You can start writing in the new editor also. Okay, so what we need the Boto3 first. Boto3 is the Python library to talk to all the AWS services. Okay, so we'll definitely invoke a few things over here. One is the Bedrock and S3. What we are going to implement using this particular Lambda, we are going to implement like image, right? We are going to create image from the user prompt. So that's why we will import Boto3, and we will create two objects. One object for Bedrock. So let's give a name client underscore Bedrock Boto3 dot client, and we will use Bedrock agent. Okay, and then client S3, which will be our S3 service. Okay, this is for S3 service. So two objects being created. One is for Bedrock, another one is for S3. Now come to the Lambda handler section over here. So very first we'll see the prompt, okay, that is coming from the event, right? Like this event will ultimately get triggered, okay, from the some API. That's our ultimate end-to-end flow will trigger from certain API, okay, API gateway. So we'll store the prompt to the input prompt variable, which will come as an event. So this is the variable input prompt, and then I'll just test it. We'll just first test it whether the input prompt is coming correctly or not from this Lambda deploy and test section. So to test it, let's first deploy the change. Okay, you need to click on the deploy for any changes in your Lambda, and then create a test event very for the very first time, or if you want to create separate test event, that you can do also. Otherwise, this edit saved event will also enable at the right hand side. Very first time create new event is there. Let's give a name. Here you can see this is the JSON area, right? This is the one that is like as you were testing from this particular Lambda only. So we'll give a prompt and we'll say generate an image of dog. Please say okay. Some format related problem is there. So you can see this Amazon queue is also another service of AWS, which will help you to fix the problem. Okay. Anyway, click on save. Now test it. So very first time we are just expecting that test event name is there, and this is the generate. The prompt is also displayed, right? And implement the other logic. Okay. Okay. Here we have to like invoke a model, right? Because Bedrock has multiple foundation model, and we are going to use the stability AI model, right? That model will create the image for us and store that image in the S3. So client Bedrock dot invoke model. This is a function name, but there are multiple parameters that we need to send. Okay, so that's why we have to create a request syntax very first time. So the body takes the JSON format. Okay, that is the one that will look into the invoke model of Boto3. So let's open search for Boto3 invoke model documentation. So click on this one. Okay, the link like model specification also. So if we look into the invoke model, invokes the specified Amazon Bedrock model, run inference using prompt and inference parameters provided in the request body. That means this invoke model is the main function which will call the LLM through the inference parameter and the prompt. Okay. So it has these are the parameters that we need to pass. One is the body bytes or seekable file like object. The prompt and inference parameters in the format specified in the content type in the header, you must provide the body in JSON format. So we need to send this body parameter in the JSON format. Then content type application JSON. Okay. By default, you must specify application JSON and then accept the default value is application JSON. And then model ID. Obviously, model ID is important to send, right? Like which model we are going to use either for image type of model like Stability AI or Llama 2 or like any other model, right? So that model ID we need to send over here. And now if we look into this one, let's go to the model ID web, the portal over here. So to find the model ID, what you can open this particular web page and then you can fetch the model ID from here. So these are the provider, Amazon Nova Lite. This is the model ID for even this is also mentioned. Okay, the modality is also mentioned over here. So re-rank, Titan embedding. So from here you can get the model ID. Okay, so for our case, so let's search for stability AI, right? So these are the model ID for the stability AI. Okay, so this is one that is required. Okay, and now and another important URL to look into it. Okay, so this is the URL that we should look into it. This URL will give the model inference parameter and response. Different model will have different inference parameter. So if you are using stability AI model, AI diffusion 0.8, for our use case, we are going to generate the image. So in that case, you need to follow their inference parameter. You cannot use Llama inference parameter for stability AI. So here, if you look into the inference parameter that we are going to call in the invoke model. So when you make an invoke model or invoke model with response stream, call using stability AI model, fill the body field with JSON object that conforms to the one below. So this is the way we need to create our invoke model body or inference parameter. The first one is the text prompt where we will send the prompt, and then we have CFG scale which will be float and the steps which will be integer and seed is integer. So this is the parameter for the prompt strength and this is for the generation step and this is for the seed. So what CFG scale does determines how much the final image reflects the prompt. So lowering the number increases the randomness in the generated image. That means if you give 0, then the prompt, if you are asking suppose like create an like sunset image with a home in front of it or like some nature, then a randomness will come more, okay, in that image. But the maximum value is 30. So if you give 30, then it will be very strict or rigid or like be specific to your prompt. But default is 10. The steps determine how many times the image is sampled. More steps lead to more accurate result, obviously. Like if we like image generation has a different sampling process, right? So through the sampling process, it generates the image. So that will determine, and then seed set as a random number and is not required. Okay. Using the same seed and setting as a previous run allow the model to generate the similar image. So similar image, if you want to generate, like if you generate a cat one time image of cat, and then if you are asking image of a cat also, so seed values will generate the specific image. This is also default value is 0. That those things we are going to use in our invoke model for stability AI. Now, if you go back to our document again, so if you look into this one, so here Amazon Titan models, if you click on Titan text model, so they have, it has separate type of request. Okay. And these are also having like invoke model response. Okay. So how the invoke model response will come, if you want to output text, you will have that response, right? So that way it is there. So stability AI model will have the similar thing. If we go here 0.8, and then if we look into this is what we are going to use it. Okay. So this is the request that we are creating right now. The very first parameter is body. It will take JSON, and the very first parameter is the text prompt, and the text prompt is our input prompt. Correct. So that is our input prompt only. CFG scale. The next parameter is CFG scale that we put at 10, and steps 30, and seed is equal to 0, the default value that we are going to put it over here. So we have called the invoke model with the very first parameter body with text prompts where we are sending input prompt. See, this is the one for specifically for the stability AI model. For different model, we have different kind of this particular, you need to change this invoke model parameters, and this parameter will vary from different model to model. This is for the stability AI. For llama, this particular parameter will also vary. For maybe Amazon Titan, this parameter will also vary. That we need to look into another documentation on another website. There is a website in AWS documentation. We can look into different model specific parameters, and then we can prepare that parameter accordingly. And the content type is application JSON, because we are going to invoke REST API over here. Okay. And accept. Now, this model ID is also important, that you need to check from the model catalog, right? So if you go to the model catalog, the model that you are going to use, copy the model ID from the model catalog and put it over here. Okay. Don't just check the model ID, I would say, okay, in the model catalog. Otherwise, the model ID will not match, and then you will program will not run. Okay. Let's continue in another video. So this is Bedrock runtime. This is not Bedrock agent. So let's change it, deploy the change. Okay. And then click on test. What we are expecting? Okay. There are some error over here. Let's go to our Lambda function and let's look into the, okay. So the error message appeared because of the permission issue of our Lambda that we are going to fix, okay, because we are now invoking one model, Bedrock model, but we don't have access, this particular IAM or the Lambda role that is associated with this Lambda, it does not have that access to invoke the Bedrock service. That we need to fix also. But let's first quickly complete the other part also over here. So what we are going to do, we are going to retrieve the information, okay, and then convert the streaming into byte. So what would be the code for that one? So the response that is coming, right? The response will have a body, okay, and that particular under that body, all the image related content will be there. So we are just going to read it and then save it to another variable. So what this particular code we are doing? So response bedrock byte that we have received, right? The byte information, right, from the streaming, that will come into the artifacts and then under 0, right? Then base 64. So we are converting this to base 64 so that we can save it to our S3 bucket. Okay. So very first line, line number 31, we converted to byte, and then from byte to base 64 that we are converting over here. And then we will decode it to B6 base 64. Okay. So that way we will complete the post processing of the generated image. Okay. Now this is the one, and then we'll upload this image to S3. So let's give an image name, doc image underscore 123. What you can do, you can create different variable for this image name, because this image name, I just put it in static because every time the image will generate in the same name, either cat image or any other person's image or some nature image also. But the image name will store in the dog image underscore 123. That's not a good practice, but that's not the focus area, right? Over here, our focus area is the Bedrock understanding. But image name, you can choose in the variable, like you can add some date timestamp, you can give certain prompt underscore, that variable also you can use. Okay, input prompt underscore something. So here we are going to save this thing to our client S3, right? S3. So client S3 object that we have already created. So client S3 dot put object, and then we'll have the bucket, and then we'll give the body, right? Body is nothing but the final image, and the key is the image name. Now we'll give a bucket from S3. Let's go to S3. So this is the bucket that we are going to use. Copy the bucket name and put it over here. You can do one thing. You can dynamically create S3 bucket programmatically and then save it, the images there also. That should be the best practice, right? But I just created a static bucket name and providing a bucket name over here. Test will definitely throw error because the role has not yet configured, right? We have not given the proper permission to the role. Let's fix it. Let's go to configuration of Lambda and come to the permission. See, the default role over here is create image role. Okay, click on that role. It will open the IAM page, identity and access management page. Here you need to add permission. We'll attach a policy. We'll give administrator access, but you can add also Bedrock access. Bedrock full access is also there. Okay, so I would, in the subsequent videos, you will see in knowledge base video specifically, you will see I have modified this particular role to or policies to Bedrock full access and S3 full access. Now, as the role is there, so you can see this is the error it is coming, right? Timeout. So that also you need to configure it, because many of the time this Lambda configuration related, timeout related issues will come when it integrate with other services. Let's now go to the very first page of Lambda. Click on the function, create that particular Lambda function. Click on that particular Lambda function, click on configuration, and you will see the general setting. Click on that edit, and here the timeout, increase this timeout to 3 minutes. Okay, or maybe if your like network connections or be depend upon that, I will just put it 3 minutes right now. Click on save. Now let's test the Lambda function, the create image one. It should now create the image. Let's click on the create image one and go to code and select that one and click test. Now you can see it is actually taking time, and that's why earlier it got rejected, right? Timeout. Now the status code is also 200. Now it is successful. Now let's go to the bucket, refresh it. See, the image got created, right? So what we have done, we have created one Lambda function. You can download it. Okay. So what we have done here, we have created a Lambda function. We first imported the Boto3. We have invoked a model with Stability AI. As per Stability AI like request, as per Stability AI standard, request standard, we created the body, and then what we did, we converted it to the base 64 and decode it, and then save it to S3 and tested it with a prompt, right? But in between also we have assigned a proper role to this particular Lambda and also increase the timeout. So that way we have created the image using the Lambda. Hope you understood. You play around it with different variable. You can play around it with different use case. Okay. In the next subsequent video, what we are going to do, we are going to create pre-assigned URL and also invoke through the API. Okay. Thank you. Now we need to build a pre-signed URL for S3 object. Why we need pre-signed URL? Because this pre-signed URL, through this URL only API Gateway will talk, okay, to that S3. So that using that particular URL, we can retrieve the generated image, right? Like we'll not go to the Lambda, will not go to console, will not go into the Bedrock or S3 to fetch the image. Through suppose like some other application, you want to like integrate this S3 image, you want to load that S3 image from the other application like Postman or maybe from Streamlit. So you need some API, right, of that particular URL to receive that particular S3 image. So that's why we need that pre-signed URL. So to start with, let's log into our IAM login with user ID and password. We'll go into the Lambda. In the Lambda code only, we'll implement few lines of code so that pre-signed URL will be retrieved, okay, as a response from that Lambda. So this is our Lambda function, create image. Yeah. So far we have implemented the generation, right, and then upload file to S3 also, that is done. So till now we can able to access S3 image for the whatever like you want to generate image, either dog image, whatever like, or cat image. So this section will start for the pre-signed URL. So this section is pre-signed URL. Let's look into the document, okay? Boto3 generated pre-signed URL. The second URL, if you look into the second URL, you will get the documentation. This is the generate pre-signed URL function. It requires 4 parameters. First one is client method. Second one is a dictionary formatted param, okay? And then we need expires in an HTTP method. Let's create a variable to retrieve the responses or store the responses. generate pre-signed URL is equal to our client name is S3. This is our client, right? Let's copy this particular function, and our client will be client underscore S3 that we have already defined, right? S3 bucket and all the mapping is done at the top. So generate pre-signed URL is the function. Let's copy this entire parameter. So client method, for our client method, it will be get object and it requires string, right? So we'll put in a string format get object. And remember, this parameter is in dictionary format. So the very first parameter will give bucket, and this is our bucket name. You can put it in a variable and then also put the variable name over here. That is also fine. And next is key. And the key is our image name. So that is the bucket and this is the image name. These are the two parameters required in this generate pre-signed URL. So that for this bucket, for this image, pre-signed URL will generate. You can change the expires in if you want to change. Otherwise, I will keep it as it is right now. But if your image is very big or like it will take time, you can change that expire in milliseconds also. Let's deploy it. And configure a test event. We'll change the prompt. So let's give prompt generate a dog image. Save it. Okay, we need to give a name, right? Okay, let's create a new event. That's why. Otherwise, you could have edit a saved event also. Save it and then and test it. See, this time the response code is 200 and we have the URL also. This is the pre-signed URL. Now, if you open it in your browser, a download will start, right? Because this is a S3 image. So you can open and download that. You can open that downloaded image once the download is complete. Let's open the downloaded image with a paint application. Okay. So this is the dog image generated, right? So we can access the dog image with a pre-signed URL, not going to the S3 and like open that S3 image. That is not the case. You can integrate this URL to your application also. Suppose you are building a Streamlit chatbot. Through the chatbot, like user is asking to generate an image of dog or cat, then you can provide a response of this particular URL embedded in an image or embedded in a like some text. Click on that image of user, will definitely get that response back with an image only, right? So that's the funda of that pre-signed URL. And as a response of this Lambda, we need to return that pre-signed URL because we are going to implement the API Gateway, right? AWS API Gateway. That only would require this Lambda response. So let's modify this particular return statement and provide a generate pre-signed URL over here. Okay, prior to go to our API Gateway, what we need to configure the permission. Let's modify the permission also over here. If you remember this particular role of our Bedrock, okay, for that particular role, what we have done, we have given entire administrator access, right? But giving entire administrator access like that way, it's not permissible or it's not advisable, right? So let's remove it. And what you can do, you can add a policy related to Bedrock only. So this particular Lambda function will execute Bedrock, right? So let's go to Bedrock, search for Bedrock policy, and then provide Amazon Bedrock full access. So earlier it was administrator full access for Lambda, right? Now it will have only Bedrock access and then Lambda execution access. But we need S3 also, right? Because that is also going to access S3 bucket. So let's first search for S3 also, that permission, and provide Amazon S3 full access also. So that was required. So now all set. Now we have a Lambda function which will generate the pre-signed URL, and the IAM roles are also set with Bedrock full access, S3 full access, and Lambda basic execution role also. Now we'll search for the API Gateway. Click on API Gateway. So what is API Gateway? API Gateway is to create the endpoint, okay? And you can have like different query strings, okay? And then you can map the query strings with the Lambda variable also. So all things that we are going to do with this API Gateway, so that this API Gateway, through this API Gateway, we can invoke certain endpoint which will send the like a query, and then it will invoke Lambda. So if you can go and then, so come down, scroll down to the REST API. You can create different type of API also, but for us, we will implement REST API. Give a name of the REST API, meaningful name. We'll give image API. And keep all the things as it is, create API. So API will get created. Now, what we need to create resources and then create method. So click on create resources and give a name of the resource name. So it would be our like the URL slash that one, right? So that path. So it will be image create API. You can give any name also. So let's create the resource. Under this resource, we'll assign method, either get method, post method, or like put method, delete method, etc. Right now, we'll just give a very simple one, get method. Click on the create method and it would be Lambda function, right? Because we are going to invoke Lambda only. So come to here, scroll down, and here you need to choose the Lambda function. So we have that create image Lambda function. Select that Lambda function from the region, and then if you want to modify integrated timeout, you can definitely put, then create method. So you can see we have API, we have the resource, and we have the method also. Now we need to do a little bit of more in this configuration section. So we'll first do method request settings. Here we are going to add a query string. So what would be our query string? It would be prompt, right? And it is required because without prompt, image LLM will not create that particular image, right? So we'll have like one URL query string. And let's give a request validator also. See, this is the one, right? From here, the prompt will come from the architecture, and API gateway will take that particular like our URL query, right? Query string. So that will pass through the API only. And we'll use request validator also. Let's use request validator so that it will validate whether query strings parameters and headers are there in the request, API request, right? So that will get validated. Click on save. So method request setting is done. Now we'll go to the integration request. Click on edit. Scroll down and come to this. mapping template. Click on add mapping template. So mapping template here, the content type is JSON, right? So we'll provide application/JSON as it is. And this is the area where the variable and the Lambda prompt will get mapped. Okay. So there is a specific format to write that particular mapping. So follow this particular mapping format. If any error is coming, you can come to here and then change any syntax, any error is there or not. You can look into it. Okay. So I will help you to write this one. So this is our prompt, right? So prompt will get mapped with the input. So $input dot params. See, if we remember, we have a query params, right? In our API. So that is also prompt. So that particular query params will map to this prompt variable, and this prompt will pass to our Lambda prompt. Okay, there also we have that event, the variable name that we are passing in our Lambda, that is also prompt. So that way this query parameter prompt will map to that particular Lambda prompt also. So this mapping will take care of the integration between the Lambda and this particular API gateway. Now we have configured all the parts. Okay, we need to now deploy the API. So deploy API can be done in multiple stages. It can be prod, it can be dev, it can be stage. I will just deploy into the dev environment, giving a name to dev. Okay, so it will have like a dev stage. So this is the stage that environment got created. Now we'll test it. So click on that method, scroll to the right, and test button is there. So here, give the query string, whatever prompt that you want to pass. Through that way, it will map, right, to that particular API, and it will go to the Lambda. So here, give a prompt, image of a cat. Last time we created a dog, right? So now we will create an image of a dog. Now click on test. So if everything is okay, all the integration is okay, that integrations will give us a response code, successful response code. And also, see, this is the 200 status code, right? So all good. We have also the URL, right? And if you open that URL in your browser, it will again ask to download it. See, this is the image, the third one, right? Yeah. So this is the latest one. Let's open it in Paint. We should see the cat image, right? So that's the cat image. Okay. So hope you have understood. There are two sections we have covered. One is pre-signed URL creation through the Lambda, and then we have implemented this API gateway also. So all the things are implemented, right? API gateway, Lambda, and then we have a Bedrock which will talk to LLM, and through Stability AI, it generates the image and put it to S3. And then what it did, like we just invoke through the API gateway, so that user prompt, though we have implemented through the console, but you can implement through Streamlit also. We'll cover another use case with the Streamlit. Okay, knowledge based one. Thank you.